I don't feel great because I lost my mom. I don't have Brianna. But why? Oh, because they were so empowered. Why? Oh, Brianna lived every single day. She had cystic fibrosis, and the world told her that she could not live, that she was going to die. And instead, she put a smile on everybody's face. She showed up to do speeches and inspired people. She was a practice manager. She showed up. Wow. And she was told she was going to die, and she did that.
For too long, we as women have been told to achieve our goals, we have to sacrifice our health, families, and our sanity. And if you're tired of the rise and grind mentality done by trying to be the perfect boss babe and ready to thrive without burning out, you are in the right place, because true success is never built from an empty cup. I'm your hostess, SaCola Lehr, work-life harmony strategist and author. And this is Work It, Live It, Own It, the podcast that takes you from burnout to brilliance. Most of us have had a moment where we realize that we're performing. We think we're showing up, delivering, keeping everything together, while quietly we're falling apart on the inside. And my guest today has lived that reality for 20 years, not as a metaphor, but literally. Nick Strand has spent 2 decades as a video engineer and a production manager building the stages that you have probably stood in front of. We're talking Beyoncé, Taylor Swift, Stevie Wonder, with zero margin for error environments where 25,000 people are watching and there is no fallback plan. However, what the crowd never saw is what was happening off stage. Nick lost his mother to cancer, and he loved his wife, Brianna, through 10 years of cystic fibrosis until she passed away in 2017 at the age of 28. And in 2019, he woke up one morning with half of his face paralyzed from Bell's palsy. And that forced stillness became the moment where everything changed. In the quiet, he wrote a memoir called Loving Someone Who Is Dying. He has built the Choose Your Attitude brand, and he has developed a Build Your Stage framework where attitude plus action equals impact, a system that has been stress tested, not in boardrooms, but in some of the most unforgiving arenas on earth. Today, Nick is a keynote speaker, author, resilience expert, helping leaders and teams perform when pressure is at an all-time high and when plans fall apart. He's reached out to this show because a line in last month's episode stopped him cold, and I'm pretty sure our conversation is going to do the same for you. Welcome to Work It, Live It, Own It, Nick Strand. Glad to have you here.
Thank you. Love to be here. So excited to chat.
You're welcome. Well, let's dive right in, Nick. You've spent 20 years building stages for some of the biggest names in the world. And you were doing this all while losing your mother, caring for Brianna, and eventually fighting Bell's palsy. Yeah. Now, most people would have walked away. Share with us what kept you showing up.
I think when you build stages and you do this for that work, you're not really able to walk away. It's kind of one of those commitments that you are there. There's really no replacement for you. So when you're there, you're committed. And that's kind of how the work mentality has been for a while is, ever since a kid, working in these positions, the project, you are that all the way through. You have to follow through till the end, because if you leave that, you're such a staple and or a link that makes it happen, or a significant part that you're there. And so I think there was a bit of that was connected, where it's part of the process. You gotta keep pushing through, and so I guess some of that resilience lasted or made it through, but there was also, community and in the sense it wasn't all alone. So there was a little bit of that to fall back on. But I mean, in all honesty, looking back at it in the moment, it was very ignorant. I remember when I found out that Brianna did have cystic fibrosis, I remember my mom questioning, she loved Brianna, but at the same time going, well, wait a minute, are you sure you're up for this? This person's going to die. And at the moment, I didn't even think of it. I was just like, well, I like this person. I couldn't think of, oh, that's a tough decision. So I guess the ignorance was there too of, well, you just, so I hadn't thought about it through the moment, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think a lot of our listeners and viewers feel the same way, that they have this job that they have to keep going. They have to, consistently show up, and then you're trying to handle your personal life as well.
Yeah.
And sometimes people feel like their job is a non-negotiable, right? This is something I've got to do. I got to push forward through. Now, your wife, Brianna, left a final message to you.
Yes.
Which was choose your attitude, create your life. And that became the name of your brand, your book, everything.
Yep.
However, I want to ask you something that most people probably haven't asked, and that is, what did it actually feel like to receive that message from someone you were losing, and how were you able to carry that message?
What's crazy is when I got it, so how that message kind of came, the meaning hadn't really kicked in yet. So where we got it, Brianna loved quotes. She would always put quotes on the fridge. The fridge is one of those places that you go to every single day. You're always going to the fridge for food, for every single meal. So she put those quotes there. So as you can imagine, 3 years old, you're told that you're going to die at 13. So when you're 13, 14, 15, you're realizing all of a sudden that these days you are privileged. It's a gift. And so you're doing everything you can to take that defeat, or, for her, when I met her, it was at 85% lung function. Every single time you go to the doctor's office, that number gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So as you can imagine, a lot of us live a life where you don't see the top of the hourglass, and we just live as if, we've got all these years left ahead of us. Where hers, it was revealed very early. So you got to see the sand slowly start to go. So all of a sudden there was a value to today, and an urgency. And so that's what these quotes would do, would be help kind of reposition that mindset. Right. And so when my mom died, she saw the memories kind of fade, and she was like, "Ooh, I don't like that, because my life is worth more than just to be forgotten." By all means, it's not forgotten by those around us, but that message, or her living in this sense, there's more people that need to hear the message. And she wanted to figure out a way. I don't think at the moment she was like, I'm doing this because. I think it was one of those things of, I need something that I can put as my mantra deep in my heart to be able to help me reflect back to, as well. So she created the quote, choose your attitude, create your life. And when she passed, her best friend and I found it on the fridge, and was like, okay, so we got it tattooed. We both got it tattooed on our arms. I got mine tattooed 2 months after Brianna passed, which was exactly our anniversary. At the moment, it was just Brianna's words, right? Where it became empowering is when 2 years later, I wake up and the left side of my face is paralyzed. And that was just kind of this huge wake up call of like, oh, wow. Like if my face can go paralyzed, being a pretty healthy person, or what I thought was healthy, what am I doing with my lungs, my brain, my heart, all these things that we don't even think about is going to work for us at this very second. And you would think losing your mom was enough. You would think losing Brianna was enough, but sometimes all these things compact, right? And we're just in that survival mode, and we don't take a moment to kind of stop, reflect, and feel. And that was my moment of going, okay, you've wanted to share this story. You've been wanting to write about it, but clearly you now have a timestamp. So you need to get to work. This is a little bit more urgent. It just so happened to be a 5-week break for a tour I was on. I was out with Dave Matthews Band, and we had about 5 weeks off. So I literally sun up to sundown, being laser focused like I am, wrote 300 pages. And as I'm writing these pages, pain is coming out of my eyes. I'm feeling every single emotion and trying to understand it. And I remember it turning into joy. And, pain and joy are not parallel, right? They're two different feelings, but they existed in the same thing. And that was a transformation that kind of caught me off guard of like, well, wait a minute. This hurts. I'm crying, but all of a sudden I love this stuff. Why do I love this? And I remember looking down and looking at my wrist where I got this tattoo, and it was her words: choose your attitude, create your life. And it was that very moment that I was like, this is that. This is that. It's not the toxic positivity. It's not that everything's going to be okay. It's that right now I do not feel great.
Right.
Why? Oh, I don't feel great because I lost my mom. I don't have Brianna. But why? Oh, because they were so empowered. Why? Oh, Brianna lived every single day. She had cystic fibrosis, and the world told her that she could not live, that she was going to die. And instead, she put a smile on everybody's face. She showed up to do speeches and inspired people. She was a practice manager. She showed up. Wow. And she was told she was going to die, and she did that. What about my mom? Oh, well, she was a woman in a very agriculture environment. She was a accountant and full of men, basically, and she would have to stand up to them and basically talk about money, and then come home and make a 3-course meal and be able to share that with the world, and then inspire me to keep empathy and keep, oh wow, here she's in this vulgar environment, yet she's teaching empathy. And oh, this is why pain is so joyful, because all the things that they gave me, right? Yeah, physically they're not here anymore. Oh, that is the surface of the pain, but underneath it, all that joy, that me taking 5 weeks and writing 300 pages was my mom's determination and discipline she gave me, right? The love that Brianna shared when we would, talk about these things and connected, that was what came out into these, pages. And you asked earlier, how did I understand or go through it? And again, at the time it was ignorance. Because there is a lot of time we kind of work through that survival mode, right? But after writing it and understanding it, it was in a sense some cleverness of things that really worked out. And some of the things we saw was, with my mom, things were very urgent, things were chaotic, very survival oriented. When Brianna passed, it was beautiful. Time slowed down, very stressful, but it was beautiful, joyful, right? And what was the difference? Well, Brianna had a plan. We had things called pillow talks where we would talk about death. We would talk about our celebration, what songs we wanted to have at our funeral or our celebration, what we live for. These things that everybody avoids, that the world does not talk about and or teach us about. There is no rule book about life. You're literally just thrown into it, expected to do it. But those were the big things that I noticed. And so those are the things that I hold on to. And that's where this whole choose your attitude comes from. Is it's not the toxic positivity, but it's choosing to feel, choosing to stand, to be present, to accept how you feel, but understand why do you feel this way? Where does it come from? And that understanding allowed me to have growth. It had me fuel to create my life. And now here, all of a sudden, I've got the brand, I've got the message, a mantra, and to see people transform when you share this deep down is just awe-inspiring. And I'm so committed because somehow I was gifted the 20 years of sacrifice, and now I have this journey to share. Same way, I can't. I just I can't let it go wasted because, it's something that others haven't been able to do. So if I can share this so that way they don't have to go through the same pain, then maybe we're doing something.
Thank you for sharing that story and that journey. And I loved how you succinctly put that pain and joy are two separate feelings, but they can coexist. And in the way of remembering our loved ones in a positive way. Because yes, we grieve, yes, we hurt, and we're sad because they are no longer physically present with us anymore. But if we cling to those joyous times and those memories that we have and the gifts of those golden nuggets, as some people call it, that they have left behind, or that we may have inherited, like you've inherited that drive and determination from your mother.
Yep.
Thank you for sharing that with us. And I want to touch base on a little bit of what you also said and how it ties into your framework where attitude plus action equals impact. We were talking a little bit earlier, and then you told me how the system can run in reverse. Can you break that down for our listeners who are exhausted, who have been just told to, hey, think positive? We were talking about that toxic positivity their whole lives, and who is done with the advice that doesn't hold under real pressure.
Yep. So I want to touch back to those things that you said, using the two words of joy and positive. And you just kind of mentioned the toxic positivity part. Joy, in our minds, we go right to laughter and or, jokes or those type of things. Joy can also be the feeling of good, the feeling of comfort, right? And so maybe it is a sad moment, but it brings you joy because it was a connection that you felt with somebody, right? So that is something that I want to remind people is that is joy. And at the same time, positive, there's the toxic positivity of negative cannot occur, that you need to only focus on the cup being half full. What this is really saying is think positive in the sense of what is your true reality? I stand right now and I do not feel good. I don't feel happy. I don't feel great. Okay, but why? Oh, here's why. And then all of a sudden you're able to look at, oh, these are the things that help me, that are actually some of the grace that I have, right? The gratitude that I have. And so that's an important step. Jumping into the framework, that's also why so attitude plus action equals impact. What I like to say is you start with the impact, because at the end of the day, nothing is going to inspire us unless we understand why, right? And this is both in your personal life and if you have a business to share with a team. That impact, that connection we make with people, you make with yourself, that is the fuel that you can hold on to. Nobody can change that. Nobody can change that, right? So as soon as you get deep down and understand, why am I sitting here doing this job every single day? Why am I doing that? All of a sudden, you can kind of start to weigh out and understand the worth, right? Your inner why. And when you have that inner why, it gives you a little bit of empowerment to build a little bit more energy, right? So then the next thing is attitude. Another one of those kind of noisy words, but attitude is the sense that, all right, this is going to be very difficult, but I can. And here's why. Okay, well, there are 6 things that say you are not capable, but there's one that says you are. So you look at that one and you go, okay, I can do this because this is me. Yes, I know the world says this, but this is me. This is why. And you do that. For example, everything on paper said Brianna's going to die. Everything on paper said Brianna's going to die. Did she? No, she lived. She lived every single day. On the roadie life, I don't know how many times, every single gig. I mean, I helped Kanye fly above a crowd. I guarantee you, before that happened, everybody on the floor said, that's impossible. That's impossible. People, can't fly.
Mm-hmm.
If we had that attitude, then yes, nothing is going to work, right?
Right.
Of course, people can't fly, but we made it happen. Why? Because we said, okay, well, maybe it hasn't happened yet, but we're going to make it happen because it's possible, right?
Right.
By all means, there's a level of like, some things are out of scope, but at the same time, within reason, that attitude, having that belief system, right? Fitness. A lot of people are wanting that goal at the end. Oh, but there's so much work. Well, but what do you feel when you get there, right? What is that feeling you're going for? Okay, well then I can do this because others have done it, so I can do this, right?
Right.
So then the next thing is action. Well, you can't just sit on the couch and believe that you're going to be able to make it without taking the steps. Well, the step is way too big. Make the step smaller. Make it an achievable step. I have friends that, are used to be bodybuilders and they're like, I'm struggling at the gym. Just go say hi to the lobby. Just go say hi to the receptionist. Don't even go work out. Next day, come back, do that again. Maybe 5 minutes on the treadmill. You're doing it. You are getting there. And before you know it, you're going to look up at the mirror and go, oh, I'm now working out an hour to 2 hours every single day. I love it. Where before I said it was impossible, but it was all my mindset. And I took the actions. I made achievable actions and the growth occurred. But yes, you're right. If you're wanting to make these huge steps, when, Kanye said he wanted to be able to fly above of everybody, yeah, that was a big leap. That was really impossible. Okay, well, what can we do? Well, we can build this system. Oh, we could build this system. We did it. So these are things that you do. Now, the whole point of this, though, too, is if you get too much action and you forget to kind of hit these other steps, you kind of lose focus, right? It's kind of like, for me, when I'm, working all day, it gets to a moment where I got to walk away from the desk because I've just like, my brain is just full. Well, it's because I've been so active that I forgot, what am I doing? Where am I at? So that attitude, right, of taking that mental and physical and putting it together and continually trying to keep that balance. Why it equals impact is because you reach that goal and or the achievement. But what gets exciting is as you do this, especially as you keep people around and you share, you start to inspire and help others. And so your impact grows externally, not just internally. And that's where the fuel that's where you become empowered. And that's like this whole entire project of why I do this is because, yeah, it sucks at night because I'm still a human and I still miss my mom. I still miss Brianna. In fact, 2 days ago was the anniversary of my mom's death. And I experienced that alone. That's not easy. I don't care what kind of superhero you are. And I felt it. I cried. I empowered myself to cry. And it was joyful. Why? Because those are feelings that remind me of who my mom was, right? Not the crying, but me in that feeling of crying allowed me to bring the emotions and or the connections that I missed, right? Of my mom, instead of avoiding them. Plus, at the same time, it helps with, some of that awareness. But so that impact helps others transform, right? As you go in there and you help and you do this, you start to transform and empower others. And when you see others empowered by that, it gives you the fuel to realize, okay, this is more than just me. This is us. This is, humans. And at the end of the day, what we do, when I say we, everybody, no matter your product or whatever, it's that human connection. And so I think that's where, that is extremely important to continue to revisit of your why and, that impact that you want to make in the world. Right.
Right.
And I think that's, mind you, some of these jobs or some of your survival is very challenging. I think there's an acceptance level of, okay, I need to give myself grace because this is a really tough situation, right? That's when I work on is, yeah, your feelings are valid. You have the right to feel that way because you are feeling that way. But what can I do to empower myself to push through this? Okay, well, here's my why. Okay, why am I doing this? Because if I get through this step, I will have something on the other side that is going to empower me and be able to give me that freedom, that comfort, or that peace, right? Or that's a memory that you want to be remembered. You don't want to just, die and not be, remembered for something. So what is that thing you want to be remembered for? Those are the things, right? By no means can you take the difficulty away from the reality, but you can find the means to be able to find more energy and or direction in the situation, if that makes sense.
I do agree because it is based on our attitude and our outlook and perspective. We all go through difficult things. We all have difficult paths and challenges, but a lot of times it's our attitude and how we look at things that can make it more stressful.
Yep.
Or we can find the joy even in the midst of the
Yep.
dense fog, right?
Yep.
So I do appreciate that. And I also appreciate the fact that you are making space to heal.
Yeah.
And because there's no amount of time where you could say grieving is over, because there's so many different phases of grieving, right? We could grieve for the rest of our lives.
We do.
And for the loved ones that we miss. And so I appreciate you being open and frank and honest about that, making space and acknowledging, yes, I'm hurting. Yes, I'm sad. Yes, this is painful. Because a lot of us, we're so bogged down in today's society that we're taught to produce and constantly be on the go. And I think during the pandemic, when we were dealing with this and you lost, you had your situation with your health right at the beginning of that time, is where a lot of people had to face themselves. You shouldn't just go out to work and run away from what we're feeling or what we're dealing with, but we had to face it. And I think that's one of the biggest, most courageous things that we can do is realize, okay, I'm feeling sad, or today I'm not feeling my best, or there were a lot of things that I wanted to achieve today, but I didn't get a chance to do that because I needed to rest. I was fatigued. I was tired. I wasn't feeling my best. But guess what? Tomorrow is another day, and maybe I will be able to accomplish some of those things tomorrow. And to wrap up our conversation, Nick,
we can't wrap it up. We're just getting started. I wish
we could keep on talking. I really do. But there's something I really have to ask you. Okay. Now you built your brand. Choose your attitude, right? Into an apparel brand, a book, a speaking business, podcast, coaching practice. You did all of that while grieving and rebuilding. I have to know, what did you have to let go of in order to build something that actually lasted?
It's crazy because, especially with AI right now, we live in a world where we try to prove to other people that we're better, that we're bigger. Mm-hmm. And I think the biggest thing that I have had to not succumb to or give up, but more so lean into, is that the reality of authenticness, right? Not being afraid to answer and say, I'm not feeling too good today. When somebody asks you, how are you doing today? I'm not doing the best. It's crazy. My tattoos on my arm, one of the things that I remember is, when you tell them you've lost this person, to see their reflection of sometimes avoidance, where they sometimes ends the conversation and they walk away because it's something heavy, especially when I say it joyfully. So having to get over some of those spaces, but also realize that this is something that we all feel and hold on to that, because that's also what makes the connection and trust of the people around us, right? I think we need to allow ourselves more grace in those challenges, in acceptance and or gratitude for feeling these ways,
Right.
as opposed to the avoidance. Now, I understand in some sense the avoidance, in certain times, obviously the energy is not able to go back and build that. But that's also kind of where my practice of, building this resilient foundation, it's the work of continually to do it. What I like to tell people is your inner self, those you have lost, it's a constant relationship, right? In a relationship, you're constantly building, because the person you were yesterday, the person you are today, and the person you are tomorrow are three different people. Completely. So it's a constant battle. And I've had some people that I've talked to that, they got in a divorce and they were like, oh, well, the person I met is not the same person, he is today. And it's like, well, you couldn't be. Yes, that you're right. That is a different person. And what probably happened is you didn't go back and reflect to be able to adapt and adjust to the challenges or the things that added up, right? There's challenges we go through that then stick with you and add triggers that you didn't have yesterday. And, or as you said, with grief, it's a roller coaster, because, I frankly don't like the word heal, because heal kind of in senses of a destination, right? That the scab is going to go over, and that I am a firm believer that it always has a little bit of bleed to it, but you're just nourishing. Okay, here is the things that I'm challenged with every single day, right? And having that acknowledgement, that awareness allows us, so when we are triggered, we can go back and go, oh, I was triggered by this today. Oh, I think this is what I was. Okay, now all of a sudden you have the awareness and understanding and the grace or gratitude to accept that this was not your identity that caused this, but this was your natural human reaction to do that. And so as you do that, you become, as I say, comfortable in the uncomfortable. And so you don't go into this awkward fight or flight mode because you don't know how to handle it. Rather, you're able to process it. I use a sports analogy and the idea that we don't practice what we're good at, we practice what we're bad at. Right? Yeah, you do kind of, touch up some of the things you're good at, but when you go watch the tapes, you're watching what you're not good at and you want to get better. So you go practice. Why do you go practice? Well, when, the football is thrown, the quarterback catches it, he's got only a few seconds to be able to make a split decision. And if all you focus on is the 12 guys or however many guys, I'm not a big football fan, but however many guys are coming at you, of course it's a daunting task. And of course that time goes really fast. But if you have practiced that uncomfortable pressure and keep practicing that feeling, all of a sudden, you're able to take those few seconds, slow them down, kind of look around, and make a proper decision rather in that fight or flight survival mode. And so that's what we're doing here. You're not removing yourself from the survival. You're not removing yourself from the actual steps. You're just becoming more aware. So that way your toolbox is a little bit bigger and you're actually able to use the tools and or understanding to be able to acknowledge and or accept, yes, this sucked today. I need to take a rest. I need to just nap because it was, acknowledgement. That's part of the game.
I like that. Yeah. I like the fact that ultimately we got to let go of our pride and our ego and acknowledge we're not 100% all the time, and making room for that, and being open and honest with ourselves first, primarily, right? Okay, today is not a great day, or I'm not feeling that great today, and being able and open enough to be honest. So Nick, I want to thank you so much, because this conversation is exactly what I thought it would be: honest, grounded, and genuinely useful. Yeah. And I'm always thankful to sit down and talk to people who have walked the walk and not just talk the talk. And what I want everyone who's listening to our conversation to take away is that resilience is not about grinding harder. It's not about pushing through, and it's more about building a foundation strong enough to hold you when life tests that foundation. And Nick has shown us exactly what that looks like. And the stakes are real, but we got to make room and space for that.
Can I say one thing real quick about this?
Of course.
One of the things I wanted to share is, as we were talking about this, we all want to try to become that superhero, right? We really want to become the Spider-Man, the Batman, those things. Those usually don't show that emotion. But if you've ever watched Shrek, every single day, in the very day, right, at night, you see the beauty or what was seen as the beauty. But at the end of the movie, all of a sudden it finds out that the true beauty was the inner soul, which was the ogre, right? The dirty parts, right? Not saying you got to let all your dirtiness out. What I'm saying is that true, authentic you, that's the beautiful you. That's the true you, right? So you don't have, the superhero is the true you. Yeah.
I love that. That's a great way to wrap it up. The superhero is the true you. Guys, listen, if this conversation moved you, I want you to do 3 things. First, grab Nick's book, Loving Someone Who is Dying. It is available on Amazon. I will put the link to that in the show notes. Second, follow him on Instagram at the Nick Strand and check out his website, thenickstrand.com. And finally, but not least, share this episode with someone in your life who is performing at their highest level and running on empty, because they need to hear this. Nick, you want to add something?
I think that's it. Outside of, chooseyourattitude.com for, some of the apparel and products to, just kind of help you, coach through it, and be able to have your own journey of acceptance and understanding. But know that you're not alone.
Love it. Love it. And Nick, I want to thank you again for trusting the WLO community with your story, because Brianna's legacy is alive in every person who hears it, that through your message. And to everyone who is listening, keep working it, living it, and owning it in your everyday lives. See you next time. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. If this episode gave you a moment of clarity, or if you heard exactly what you needed to hear, please follow this show, leave a review, and share it with someone who is navigating their own messy middle. And remember, your well-being is your wealth. To dive deeper into the Prone framework and grab your copy of The Harmony Hustle for Women, head on over to SaCola.com. Until next time, work it, live it, own it in your everyday lives.